Hey guys, Jim Nix. How you doing? Hope you're having a good day. I am been experimenting with a technique about taking daytime shots and converting them to night shots, and so it can be done. It doesn't work in every photo, but I found in some situations it does work pretty well, in fact. And so I thought I'd do a little video about that. If you saw my last video, which was the chocolate shop, or maybe that was 2 videos ago. Anyway. I used gradient filters to just darken the edges of that photo. So it was just a straight on shot of a shop. There was no sky, and I just darkened the edges and made it look like night. And that's basically what you do here, but I wanted to do it with a more realistic example of a shot you would want to convert to a night shot, which is something that included the sky. And so that's what this is. I shot this on my last trip over to Paris. It was late morning, so it was probably about 8 or 9 in the morning. I can't remember. It was a really foggy kind of day, a lot of haze in the air. And this was one shot from my set of brackets. It was the brightest one, and I chose that on purpose because that's really what it looked like. It was, thankfully, the lights were still on, which I can show you how you can sort of add lights back to a photo if you don't have them. But in this case, all the lights were on, but the sky was still overcast, and I find that the overcast photos work a whole lot better for this than, for example, like a bright, sunshiny day. So it is converting day to night, but it's not converting, a bright, sunshiny day in the park into a moody night shot. That's not what I'm talking about here. So let me show you what I do. I'm going to close the histogram, and I'm going to start with a couple of filters, and these are the ones I'm going to use pretty much again and again. And so I'm using color temperature and I'm using exposure, and I'm just going to take these down, and that made a huge difference right there, but that's not the extent of it. I'm going to do this in a couple of different steps, and I'll talk about why here in a minute. Let me sort of get this going, and I'm kind of riffing here a little bit on the fly in terms of how I'm doing it. That's a little too blue. So maybe something like that. Then we get another layer and add the same filters, color temp, and exposure. And then once again, sort of drop this down and drop the exposure. And then I'm going to go get the gradient mask, and I'm going to start at the bottom and pull it up to the top. And the reason I did 2 separate gradient filters is because I wanted this section in the middle, which is with the bridge and these lights, to be a little bit brighter, and that's because all the lights are here. And so I want to give the effect somewhat of this light from these street lights sort of cascading onto the brickwork here that's sort of at the in the middle of the photo. And so that's why I did 2 different ones instead of, that's a little too dark on the bottom, instead of, I'm trying to get this just right, instead of 1. Let me move that up a little bit. There you go. I think that looks a little bit better. So as you can see, we've already come a long way, but we're not done. So I'm going to go add some more stuff. Let's see. I got to look at my notes here. Okay, I'm going to get a preset, and the preset I'm going to use is from a new preset pack, which I think that was my last video actually. So new preset pack is called A Movable Feast. It's a bunch of Paris-inspired presets, and the one I'm going to use is this Rue de Rosiers, which is kind of a cool street in Paris. Here it is. And as you can see, I'm sort of creating a twilight sort of feel, kind of blue hour, right? That's way too blue though, so I'm going to take the opacity of this layer down, maybe something like 60. That's a little bit better. Still a little bit blue. Maybe I'll take that down a little bit more. And the other thing I can do is I can go back to these previous layers and just tone down the temperature a little bit. Here we go. So let me tone down that blue a little bit, and then let me go to this layer and tone down that blue a little bit, which is also called just warming it back up, right? So let me get back up here, and there we go. Still fairly blue, but I think it looks a lot better. And you can see how I sort of left that band in the middle a little bit brighter, but that's how I would do that. Next, I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to mess with the hue, saturation, and luminance a little bit. And so for this one, I want to take the saturation of the red, the yellow, and the orange and bump those up a little bit, because I'm trying to create a little bit more of that light. So I'll just bump these guys up, give them a nice boost. I'm trying to create more of that intense light there. I think it plays well off of the blue. And then I'm going to take the luminance of these guys up a little bit as well. just to make it a little bit brighter. And then I'm going to take the luminance of the blue down a little bit, right? So I don't want it to be quite as blue, and in fact, I'm going to drop the saturation of the blue because I still think it's a little too blue. So there you go. I think that looks better. Let me show you what that's looking like now. So again, we've come a long way. I definitely think it looks like night, or at least twilight. And I'm going to do one more trick. I'm going to do it twice, and that is once again taking the color temperature and the exposure. But this time, this is how you can add light back into a scene, right? So I just take the gradient, or excuse me, the radial mask, and I'm going to drop a point right here. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. And what I'm going to do is basically, oh, you know what? I need to invert the mask. Invert and then increase the exposure a little bit and the warmth, right? So that's how you add light back in. So that would be if you had a street light, let's say up here, kind of out of frame to the right, sort of hanging over your head, you can create the illusion of having that light cascading here on the stonework. And so, you know, you can just move that around to make it look however you want. I'll warm it up a little bit more, maybe brighten it a little bit. And then I just hit apply. There you go. So it looks like a street light is cascading down over my head, and that's the effect I'm going for. And in this photo, I would do that one more time. And let me get color temp, and let me get exposure. And then I'm going to get the radial mask, and I'm going to drop one over here as well, just to give the illusion of there being another one. I'm going to tilt it a little bit, like that. Maybe move it a little closer to the trees, stretch it out. I'm going to tilt it back, not that much. There you go. I'm going to invert the mask because otherwise you start affecting all these larger parts of the photo. I just want to affect what's inside that circle. And then once again, I'm going to bump up the temp, and I'm going to bump up the exposure a bit. There you go. And then you can just work with the shape of it and the feathering to sort of get it looking however you like. I'm going to leave it like that just to not waste your time showing me fiddling around. But that's how you can add light back. So let's say you're doing a cafe scene and you have something like this where you convert it to night. You could drop a couple of these, because usually cafes will have lights out under the awnings, and you could drop the radial mask below any of the lights there, and then use the temperature control and the exposure control to create sort of a spotlight effect. And that's really how you do it. And from here, now I've done nothing else to the photo, so I haven't done nothing with contrast or any kind of details. You could go in, well, that's actually not entirely true. I did add the preset, which had a bunch of stuff in it. So you could say I have done some of that. But you could also just come in here and add another preset if you wanted to give it another little kick. I'll go back to Movable Feast, and, you know, there's vintage. You know, you could change some of the color scheme a little bit if you wanted to. I'm not sure how this is going to look. We'll find out here in a second. It's kind of cool, actually. Kind of neat. But you could take that intensity down if you wanted to. Something like that. Actually, that looks really cool. I think I'll leave that. And so there you go. I've basically taken a photo that was taken in daytime, like at 8 or 9 in the morning. It was right before the lights went off. I was actually standing here shooting, and the lights went off, and then I was like, all right, I'm done. You know, having the lights on helped, but even if the lights weren't on, you could use these sort of tools like the radial mask to go drop light spots in the river. You know, you just turn it and elongate it, and then change the color and the temp and the exposure there to brighten it up. But that is taking basically a daytime shot that looked like that and turning it into that, which looks like a twilight evening kind of shot. Moody. I added some extra lights here, and I think I completely changed the look of the photo, which was the entire point. So that's how you do it in Luminar. It's pretty easy. I will say it doesn't work with every shot. If you have a really bright, cloudy, you know, sunshiny day with puffy white clouds, I don't think I would even mess with it. I would just come back later. Cloudy days work best in my experience, but I recommend experimenting, see what you find out. You never know what you're going to come up with. And that's kind of how I got to this one. So that's it, my friends. That's hopefully a quick video on how to turn day into night in Luminar. Hope it helps. Hope you have fun with it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time, friends. Adios.